A warning to all our viewers, what you're about to watch is a true story. The events depicted in this video may be disturbing or unsettling. The viewer's discretion is strongly advised.
Arrest warrants reveal the parents of a missing 4-year-old South Carolina girl have confessed to the role in her death.
We reached out to the Aiken County Sheriff's Office and found new details showing Javeayah's mother's abuse played a key role in her death, according to those arrest warrants. Investigators say a confession coming from parents Michilae Herring and Johmarea Harris shows Javeayah's mother physically abused her, causing her death sometime between May 1st and June 15th. Neighbors who used to live beside this family in Oconee County tell me as soon as they heard about Javeayah's disappearance, they feared the worst.
She did something to the baby. That was my first thought. Every time that I went and got her, she was in a room on the floor on a mattress that had urinated all over it. She was dirty, unfed, and she always had an iPad pushed up to her face, like propped up already. And she didn't move. She just laid there in one spot.
Now, Miss Young tells me Javeayah was very rarely allowed to go outside. Again, Javeayah's parents have both been charged with homicide by child abuse.
The 911 call came in on June 30th, 2026. It was a frantic, desperate plea from two parents in Aiken County, South Carolina, claiming their 4-year-old daughter, Javeayah Harris, had simply vanished into the evening air. For the community, it was a nightmare. But behind closed doors, a much colder reality was setting in. For 30 days, these parents maintained a facade of grief, living their lives while their daughter's fate remained a secret only they knew. We now know that the search for a missing child is over. Investigators have confirmed the recovery of Javeayah's remains. The lie they lived for a month has finally been laid bare. To these parents, their own daughter had become an inconvenience, something that was simply in the way of the life they wanted to live. Today, we don't just examine a disappearance, we examine the cold, calculated performance that kept her death hidden, and the heartbreaking reality that she was never missing at all. She was trapped by the very people sworn to protect her.
I will not refer to them as mom and dad, or mother or father. They don't deserve that title. I stand before you saying this is one of the most difficult, deeply disturbing, and emotionally taxing investigations this office has ever worked, and it's weighed heavily on this sheriff's office, all these other law enforcement agencies, all these people behind me that's worked tirelessly to bring this to an end, and it's weighed heavily on our community. I am truly sickened to share what this investigation has uncovered. What started as an exhaustive and complex search quickly grew to something that I would have never imagined. Understand that I cannot discuss all the specific details in this case. But at this time, I can share that a few human remains were recovered in an area known as Cedar Creek Reservoir, also known as Stumpy Pond in Fairfield County. These remains were immediately sent to the State Law Enforcement Division. DNA of the remains are consistent with being the biological offspring of Johmarea and Michilae. I want to also share with you that through forensic evidence, statements, and analysis, extensive and deliberate efforts were made to destroy and conceal evidence following Javeayah's death.
Before we go further, If this is your first time here, welcome. We build these investigations from public records, court documents, and verified reporting only, and we go slow, because these families deserve accuracy over speed. If that's the kind of true crime you're looking for, subscribe now, because what you're about to hear only gets harder to look away from. Strip away the headlines, and Javeayah Harris was 4 years old. She lived in Aiken County, South Carolina, in a home near the intersection of Hillsborough Street and Ridgecrest Road, the kind of quiet southern block where everyone knows whose dog got loose and whose porch light stays on late. She was 3 feet 6 inches tall, 40 pounds. The Aiken County Sheriff's Office would later describe her the way people who actually knew her described her: smart, talkative, friendly, almost too friendly, one neighbor would say. The kind of child who didn't understand stranger danger because she'd never had a reason to. But there's one detail that matters more than any other, and it comes from a woman identified only as Ms. Young, who lived near the family. She said Javeayah wouldn't cross the street alone. She liked to hold people's hands. Remember that detail. Hold on to it the way she held onto the hands of the people around her, because in a few minutes you're going to hear exactly how her disappearance was explained to police, and that detail is going to sit very differently in your stomach. On the night this story becomes public, Javeayah is last known to be wearing pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, Crocs on her feet, pink beads woven into her braided hair. It's an image that will circulate on digital billboards across Aiken County within 72 hours. A convenience store sign on Ascauga Lake Road, asking strangers driving to work to look for a face that, by then, authorities already suspected they would never find alive. That's where this story starts. Not with a crime scene, with a photograph. June 30th, 2026. Just before 9 at night. What happens next mobilizes an entire region. The FBI joins the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. Helicopters go up. Drones sweep the tree line. K-9 units are brought in. Within days, more than 200 first responders and thousands of volunteers are combing thousands of acres of South Carolina woodland, during a heat wave pushing the heat index past 100 degrees. People who had never met Javeayah Harris spent their 4th of July weekend searching ditches and fields for her. For 4 days, this is the story South Carolina tells itself. A missing child, a community refusing to give up, a family desperate for answers. Before his arrest, Javeayah's father, Johmarea Harris, sits down for an interview with News 12. He describes his daughter as respectful, obedient, not the kind of kid who runs off. He says he and Javeayah's mother have no idea what could have happened to her. Hold that interview in your mind. We're going to come back to it, and it's not going to sound the same the second time. By Friday, July 3rd, something changes. The sheriff's office quietly announces that visible search efforts are being scaled back. No real explanation is given, just a smaller footprint, fewer boots on the ground, a search that seems to be cooling. At the time, nobody watching knew why. If you've ever wondered what it actually takes to turn a missing persons case into a homicide investigation, the evidence, the timeline, the moment law enforcement stops looking for a living child and starts looking for something else, that's exactly where we're headed next. Subscribe now, because the next part of this story is the moment everything changes. July 4th, 2026. Sheriff Marty Sawyer stands in front of the cameras. He has spent 36 years in law enforcement. He calls this the hardest announcement of his career. Investigators now believe, he says, that 4-year-old Javeayah Harris is dead and has been dead for at least a month. Not missing for 4 days, dead for 30. The math alone should stop you. If investigators are right, Javeayah was already gone before her mother ever dialed 911, before the billboards went up, before the helicopters, the K-9 units, the volunteers standing in 100-degree heat, calling her name into the woods. Sheriff Sawyer announces the arrests in the same breath. Johmarea Harris, 23, charged with homicide by child abuse. Michilae Herring, 22, charged with homicide by child abuse, and with filing a false police report.
And we're gathered here, and I'm gathered here with all these law enforcement partners to make the hardest announcement that I've ever had to make in my 36 years career in law enforcement. I'm deeply saddened to tell you that our investigation and evidence leads us to believe that 4-year-old Javeayah Harris is deceased. It's the outcome that we all feared, and sadly, it's the outcome that we must face. We'll have to face it together as a community. Our search for Javeayah drives on. We are continuing to put massive law enforcement resources to work to recover Javeayah and bring her home. We all hoped and prayed to find her alive. But it's extremely important to bring her home to her family, and it's important to bring her home for us. We are currently searching an area of interest right now, not in Aiken County, and I am not disclosing where that's at. But I'm sure you understand, if in fact Javeayah's body is where we think it is, it's going to be a difficult time for everybody there. And we don't need anybody from the outside of law enforcement, trying to access that area. Today I'm announcing that we have arrested Javeayah's parents. We've arrested her dad, 23-year-old Johmarea Harris, and her mom, 22-year-old Michilae Herring, for homicide by child abuse and filing a false police report. Additional charges may be forthcoming. We'll figure that out as the investigation goes further.
One more detail lands almost as an afterthought, and it shouldn't. Herring gave birth to a newborn on July 1st, one day after reporting Javeayah missing, 3 days before her own arrest. That baby is placed with relatives the same day her parents are booked into the Aiken County Detention Center. A missing child investigation just became something else entirely. And now the question isn't, where is she? Anymore. It's, what were they doing this whole time? Here is what the arrest warrants allege, in language pulled directly from the court filings. Sometime around June 5, 2026, Javeayah suffered an injury from abuse warrants attribute to her mother. Neither parent sought medical attention. Investigators say her body remained inside that Hillsborough Street home for weeks, from roughly May 1st until June 15th. Sit with that window. 5 weeks, 2 working parents, 1 pregnancy reaching full term, because during that exact stretch of time, life outside that house didn't stop. Michilae Herring told the court she works for Transcom, paid every 2 weeks. Johmarea Harris works at DHL. There were shifts to show up for. There was a pregnancy to carry to its final month. There was, somewhere in the background, an eviction Herring had already been through in Union County that winter. A writ of ejectment finalized in January, just months before this. Harris had weathered one of his own back in 2023. Two people navigating housing instability, low-wage jobs, and an approaching due date. None of that explains what investigators allege happened inside that home, but it draws the outline of two people already under pressure, choosing, according to the warrants, concealment over consequence. They kept working, they kept living in that house, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, a woman who was 39 weeks pregnant was preparing for a delivery room, while, investigators allege, her daughter's body remained under the same roof. That's not a single act of violence you're looking at anymore. That's 5 weeks of choices. That's the kind of case detail you don't get from a headline. You get it from reading the warrant, word for word. And that's exactly the work this channel exists to do. If you want investigations that go past the headline and into the paperwork, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this kind of research keep getting made. Now go back to that 911 call, because we finally have it. Released by the Aiken County Sheriff's Office on July 6th, the call is short. Herring's voice, giving the address, 39 Hillsborough Street, and a story. Javeayah was playing outside near the chicken coop. She went in to finish cooking dinner. When she came back out, her daughter was gone. On the recording, Herring tells the dispatcher she's 39 weeks pregnant. She says she can't keep up with her like that. When asked whether Javeayah has any health conditions, Herring mentions a possible autism concern, one she immediately admits was never formally diagnosed. Investigators would later allege none of it happened the way she described. This is the moment the case stops being about what happened to Javeayah and starts being about what her mother chose to say out loud to a 911 dispatcher with full knowledge, according to the warrants, that her daughter had already been gone for a month. It's the difference between a tragedy and a performance. And on July 6th, prosecutors filed a charge that makes that distinction official, filing a false police report. Remember Ms. Young's detail that Javeayah didn't wander, that she liked to hold people's hands? Now you understand why it mattered. It was never really a story about a chicken coop. It was a story built to survive exactly as long as it needed to. The language in both arrest warrants is almost identical, and it's worth hearing exactly as written. Both parents allegedly caused Javeayah's death under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to human life, not by a single violent act, but by failing to get her medical help after she was injured. But the warrants don't treat the two parents the same. Herring is tied directly to the injury itself, and to something even harder to hear. A warrant states she admitted to disposing of her daughter's body. Harris's warrant describes a different role, failing to report her death and allowing her body to remain inside the home for those 5 weeks. One allegedly caused it. Both, according to investigators, chose to bury the truth instead of the tragedy. Former Deputy Solicitor April Sampson, offering outside legal analysis on the case, explained how prosecutors build a homicide by child abuse case without a recovered body. Confessions, cross-referenced against cell phone location data, against family interviews about the last confirmed contact with the child. It's slow, it's methodical, and according to the warrants, it's exactly what led investigators to 2 confessions. 2 confessions, not one, which means, according to the state's own filings, both parents eventually told investigators some version of the truth they had spent a month hiding from everyone else. Before we go into what's still unresolved here, because a lot is still unresolved, if you appreciate documentaries that hold off on conclusions until the record actually supports them, this is the last moment to subscribe before we close this one out. As of this recording, Javeayah Harris, has still not been found. The search has moved nearly 2 hours north of Aiken to Debutary Creek, near the Fairfield and Union County line, a stretch of water investigators have only ever called an area of interest, without explaining why. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division and the Department of Natural Resources have put boats, drones, and dive teams into that water. Nobody outside the investigation has said what led them there. Back on Hillsborough Street, law enforcement returned on July 7th, not to search this time, but to collect evidence from the home itself. Outside, on the same lawn where search volunteers once gathered, neighbors have started leaving something else: balloons, stuffed Mickey Mouse toys, a memorial growing on the same property now wrapped in crime scene tape. Both parents have been denied bond. A circuit court judge has 30 days to decide whether that changes. Michilae Herring's first formal court appearance is scheduled for September 18th. No trial date has been set. No cause of death has been released, and investigators have never publicly stated a motive, only the pattern of what they allege these two people chose to do, day after day, for 30 days. That absence matters. It means everything you've just heard is what the evidence shows, not a verdict. Both parents remain legally presumed innocent unless and until a court decides otherwise. But evidence has a way of speaking for itself. A missing child search that turned out to be a search for a body already gone. A pregnancy carried to term inside a house holding a secret. A 911 call built to survive scrutiny it was never going to survive. Somewhere between a Union County eviction notice and a delivery room, two parents made choices this community is still trying to understand. And a 4-year-old girl who liked to hold people's hands never got the chance to hold anyone's again. If this case moves you the way it moved us to research it, subscribe and stay with us as this story continues to unfold. Because, for Javeayah, the search isn't over, and neither is the truth.